So here's an example, the national decision model. This is what we're used to in policing over the last 5 or 6 years. It's what you might call a hard problem analysis. It's the standard approach. We gather information and intelligence on a particular situation. We assess threat and risk and develop a strategy. It doesn't tell us how we should develop the strategy, what sort of strategy we should use, but it does tell us to create a strategy. We consider our powers and the policies which structure and constrain our action, and then we identify options, but it doesn't tell us what sort of options are going to work best in what situation, and then it requires us to take action and review what happened. This is really based around a very standard industry-based plan, do, check, review cycle, which is very common in the private sector. There's also another model called SARA, which also is very useful for us. We use it a lot, and it helps us to scan, analyze, respond, and assess. Planning, doing, checking, and reviewing again. We spot the problems using knowledge databases and information electronic maps. We analyze it. We use hunches, our information technology, to understand the characteristics and causes of the problem. We work with the community and we devise a solution, and then we look back and see if the solution worked and what lessons can be learned. That's perfectly fine. We all agree that is a good thing. But here's a different type of problem, a complex problem. It doesn't work as a nice tidy cycle. It's super complex. There's no real clear definition of a problem in a community or in a neighborhood. What we tend to do is take certain problems and set them aside. So we might look at drugs one week and antisocial behavior another week, and domestic violence at another time, and forget the fact that they are all very, very closely connected and happen in the same place. So there isn't a single definition that covers all of those issues. Every single district, every single neighborhood is also unique because it has its own unique combination of problems and people in that place. So we need to recognize the uniqueness of every single district. You can't just borrow ideas from one neighborhood and plonk them down in another neighborhood and hope that it all works out. And of course, the problem situation is always changing. Every time new people or new knowledge is created within a neighborhood, new communications, then the issues and constraints that are happening in that location change. Every time we implement an intervention, every time we run an operation in that area, we change the nature of the problem. And there aren't any right or wrong answers in these. Often people in evidence-based policing would like to think that there are interventions that definitely work and interventions that definitely don't. But actually, interventions mostly work most of the time, and what we need to do is work out how we can better implement them and make them work better when we do implement them. There aren't always nice, tidy alternatives. We can't just close down a neighborhood and start again, although we might want to try sometimes. So we have to create our own solutions, and the community themselves, the people who live there 99.99% of the time, have to live with the consequences of the things that we do. And the problem is, for us as public servants, we don't have the right to be wrong. We only have one shot at this. We go and do something and we make a mess of it, we make a mess of other people's lives. So we've got to make sure that the interventions that we are going to implement in a particular location are going to have the best chance to work, and that we consider the implications of it going wrong as well. And the final thing is that distinguishes these complex or wicked issues is that there's actually no point at which we stop. This neighbour doesn't go away and thank us and shake our hands and say, wonderful, thank you, we're all fixed and everything's wonderful. What happens is that it gets somewhat better or somewhat worse, and it goes in a cycle. But sometimes we find districts and neighbourhoods that have been problematic for decades and maybe even hundreds of years, and it requires a lot more than just a short operation to fix. So bear in mind that we're thinking about this idea that there are certain types of problems that we as police forces are able to tackle, and we tackle well, the hard system problem, and then there are soft system problems like this that are super complex, not often known in the literature and in practice as wicked issues, because they're just too complicated for us to even really understand, let alone create satisfactory and successful solutions.